All right, how's it going, everybody? So with me here today is Omar. Omar's an individual that I've worked with and who has worked with me for a bit of time now. And Omar recently closed an auto body uh, business, an automotive business. He did so just days before his 24th birthday. So he's still 23 years old when he inked the deal. I believe it was your first day operationally when you showed up at the business was actually your birthday. Is that correct, Omar?
That is correct.
I love it. So thank you for coming on. I have wanted to get with you and just learn a little bit more. I mean, we've obviously talked um, off the record, but I thought it would be fun for everyone to hear your story and also for me to learn a few things about your process up until this point. Do you want to share, firstly, what you were doing? Because you did have an entrepreneurial background. If I'm not mistaken, you had a couple of business ventures that you had started at a young age. Do you want to talk a little bit about your background before you got into this game of buying businesses?
Sure. Um, so, firstly, it started when I was probably around 13. Started going out mowing lawns, just trying to make an extra buck here and there. And from there, I sort of saved up some money, was working, had a night shift job when I was going to school, still in school, working nights. And then I slowly went into the mechanic side of things, and I started working on cars after school. I started making money there. It got to the point where I had two other individuals working under just under me. We were working together to get these vehicles out. So it got to the point where I needed help, and sort of started this other business, you could call it, working on vehicles. It was a mechanic shop, and from there, I kind of went into it was kind of went into the stock market, had some money saved up and I tried to trade penny stocks, and kind of lost all my savings there. Didn't go too well. So that was kind of a learning lesson there.
I did the
From
same thing
there,
about 16, by the way. I did the same damn thing. Worked hard, stacked up better part of 10 grand, traded it, and
yep,
lost. So yeah, been
yeah,
there.
that's about right. I lost around there too. Got a little too confident in the market, and one day my account had dipped. I basically bought up most of the money I had in a certain company, betting it go up because of some news release, and it didn't, and I kind of lost all my money there. So that was a learning lesson. But still continue to work on cars. I graduated high school and did that for a little bit, and then I came to the state of Washington, where I have my family, and just kind of was to the point where I wanted to move. I was the only one out there, and it just wasn't working out, and all this and that. It just wasn't the same. So came out here for a visit, and 3 months later, I actually made the move and closed everything down, closed the whole shop down out there. Moved here, and then 3 months later, after arriving here, my partner and I decided to open a business in the restaurant business, which worked out. We've been at it for the better part of 3 years. Right now, we're working on opening a second location, and in the meantime, I started this process about a year and a half ago. I'd say a little bit more, the better part of a year and a half ago, and wanted to go back into the auto industry, and decided to go for the auto body industry this time. And just looked at deals all over the place. I traveled to Colorado, Vegas, Houston. Let me see where else. Montana, Wyoming. So I went to several places, visited about I'd say about in total about 10 or 12 shops, roughly speaking, but had way more deal flow. Just it got to the point where I would ask for financials. I looked at them and make the judgment call if it would be a business that was financeable. Most of them, you actually realize that they cook their books, and there's no way a lender would go for it. I mean, the owner can say all they want about their business, but if it doesn't reflect it on the P&L, or it's not going to happen. Your tax returns are actually more important than P&L. I'd say the
Yes.
the lender's going to look at the at the tax returns, and make sure you get the actual tax returns, because a lot of them do what they call like amended returns or something like that. I forgot what they call it, but I don't know what they do. They change they revise their tax returns and resubmit them. But those are the ones your lender's going to ask for copies of transcripts from the IRS, from the lender yourself, and all this and that. So if there's something phony, I'd say you address it ahead of time, and not spend all this time and money, and realize that stuff can go wrong. I also was at a point where I was going to close one other deal, and they got close enough, but the owner had issues, health issues with a family member, and we had to back out. We weren't getting the stuff we needed, and we only had a 90-day period to close the deal, so it definitely was not going to happen. From there, I found this one, and it took about 90 days to close, because I took it to two other lenders. They both denied my loan. The third lender, which Jason and I know, was the one that pushed the deal through. They were willing to work with me, and yeah, they got the deal to work, and took about 90 days, and we closed it.
I love it. So let's go back a little bit. First of all, love the story. You have an entrepreneurial spirit, certainly. I mean, you started working on cars when you were in high school, it sounds like, and making some money there. You then move to the state of Washington, and you open up a restaurant, which takes some cojones, but you're still in that business. And obviously, you wouldn't be in that business if we're going terrible. So we can make some assumptions that that's, doing all right for you, which is a fair play. But what was the catalyst that got you to go from starting businesses, which you had done in a small scale with the auto industry prior in high school, and then you move to Washington, you start a small restaurant, or a small to mid-sized restaurant, right? And now it looks like you're looking to expand that. But what was it that made you shift gears and go into the world of buying businesses? What was it that appealed to you, and what do you see now that you've started a business the good old-fashioned way, you've bought a business? That business closed, by the way. You closed your deal, what, about 2 months ago now?
About 2 months ago.
Okay, so you have a little bit of perspective now. You're kind of at the same point. I know Angela, my girl's deal, hers closed on the 27th of April. I think yours closed like right around that same time, right? Because she's just past her 60-day marker. So I think the both of you closed within like a week of each other or something like that. But anyways, so I asked her the same question last week when we talked about, her vantage point now that she's closed. But what was your vantage point before you bought a business? And now what is your vantage point now? And compare that to opening a business. I know that's kind of a lot, but if you try to tackle that on.
So yeah, so the one thing that attracted me to buy a business is it's starting a business from scratch. It has its pros and cons. The biggest con is your odds of actually making a buck it goes down for sure. And I just thought it was going to be easier to go in, buy already an existing business with management and some sort of customer, some sort of reputation where they had customers from day one. That's the thing that attracted me the most. Was it'd be easier to buy an existing business that had 20, 30 years of existence, that had a good reputation, that had a good market share, than it is to go and try to penetrate the market as a new owner. And I think the odds of success, I thought, would increase by buying an existing business. But we do have things can happen when you buy a business too. Your employees can leave, and all sorts of things can go wrong too. So each side of things, by starting one and buying one has its pros and cons, I'd say. But it is a little bit easier to go into an already existing business, purchase it, and sort of start from there than it is to be the new guy in the block, and the new company that just opened maybe like 2 months ago with just yourself and maybe a dog. You probably won't have any employees because you probably won't have any capital. And it's easier to raise capital, that's for sure, when you want to buy an existing business, because you have something to look at look at financials and see what it's done, and make your own projections of what you can do. And that's kind of the idea there. But I think it's way easier to buy one, in a sense. The whole buying process is, it's simple. It is extremely simple to just look at it and how you buy a business, but doing it, it's definitely not easy. You definitely have to be dedicated, and just go for it, and don't you'll have some hiccups throughout the process, but you can make it work, I'd say.
And I know for you, one of the things that impressed me most about you that has led to you getting this deal done, and now you have an operational track record that you're building in real time. You and I were talking off the record. It sounds like operationally things are going quite well. We'll talk a little bit about that to the degree you want to discuss. But you just stayed after it. You were very, very gritty. I know you had the deal that came close and then it didn't go through. I know you had a couple of individuals on your team that were not performing, and I think you had some stuff there that took place. I don't know how much of that you want to discuss, but you just stayed after it. You were persistent. I remember talking to you when you're getting close, and I remember delivering some fairly blunt messages of like, dude, just get it done. Like you've come this far. I probably used 4-letter words and stuff because when I'm really talking about business and deals are on the line, I get intense. But it's the idea of you're so close now. It's like and I told Angela the same thing. And I tell everyone when they get close, screw everything, get the result. Right? Is basically the mentality. Screw everything and get the result. Assuming it's a business you want to acquire, but this business that you're now the owner of, I think you've been happy with it by and large. But anyways, where do we go from here? Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the biggest challenges with the transaction? I know a lot of people here that are going to be watching and listening. They want to know, yes, about how it is once you close, but I think for a lot of people, they have questions about, the deal itself, working the deal itself. What were your biggest lessons learned throughout this process of negotiating these different deals and then closing this one? Is there a couple? I know you talked about the tax returns, but is there anything else you can think of that that you would advise people to watch out for that made a big impact for you?
Yeah.
You know what the kind of consensus on the internet is. So compared to what's out there, what would you notice, or what have you noticed that's different?
One thing I do a little bit, I mean, I kind of, let's back up a little bit. One thing I do a little bit different would be having more investors in my pipeline, people I could reach out to, having that capital ahead of time before even finding the deal.
Yes.
And definitely interviewing lenders, because each lender has their own criteria, their own buying criteria for a buyer or a borrower. That's what they call it. And I actually got the last lender that denied my loan was it had to do with my experience, lack of experience. So it was that. But not only that, the other thing was they required at least a year's worth of capital of equivalent to your payment in your personal bank account that couldn't be used for the loan, which I didn't have, and that sort of set the loan off and denied the whole loan. So I had to interview lenders and really get really interview them and ask them questions. What does a qualified buyer look like? And they'll BS you sometimes. They'll say, this is required by the SBA and all this and that if you're doing an SBA deal, but a lot of times it's BS. They'll say it today, and then a week from today they'll probably forget about it. Just certain things that the SBA requires the money coming from you, which is not true. The SBA does not require it. It is, the SBA does say that the money can't be borrowed and then repaid with the profits of the company you're buying.
Be a loan. That's the key. It can't be a debt instrument. You can't have, your uncle or some investor give you $100,000 and then turn it into now the day after closing, you could write a promissory note. You didn't get a fee, but you could do it the day after closing, but you can't create a promissory note before close. But anyways,
correct.
Just an important
That
point.
that is a big one. And also ensuring that you do you have a game plan? These lenders interview for about an hour, and they sort of ask you questions of what you envision, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I mean, what I said to the lender would, if I was to get interviewed again, would be completely different. That's what I thought I thought that was the game plan. But once you get into the game, you realize it's not like you think it is. Once you're really doing it, um, you sort of get an understanding of the company and how the industry runs, and what are the key indicators. But if I was to take an interview,
Yeah. Talk about that. That's really interesting. So what did you learn in that process of how you would handle because you're right, you will get interviewed when you're making a loan application, especially if it's of a
yep.
decent size of capital that you're requesting. What did you learn? I'm really curious to hear this.
So be prepared. They'll
Yes.
throw some. Be prepared. Really understand your industry. Get there's certain websites you can access and learn a little more about your industry. I'd interview a lot of talk to people that have industry experience and learn all the key the language used in your industry. There's certain words used that mean something in that certain industry. But really be knowledgeable of the industry. Really study it. That's one thing I'd do. Don't sound like you're the new guy on the block, even though you are. Just be prepared. That'd be one thing I'd do different. Be extremely prepared with you know just learn the ins and outs of the industry you're trying to go into. What makes how do you acquire new customers? How do they come in? Are they referred over? How do you get paid? All this and that. You have to learn all those things. You have to know. How do you get paid? Do you get paid when the customer takes delivery of this example in the auto industry, of their vehicle? Do you bill insurance? You have to know all these sort of things, and they want to know. And then you have to have projections of where the company you think it could go, which have to be sort of realistic projections, but they don't have to be they're projections. That's what they are. They're not. It's not a guaranteed result. But just don't overshoot. Just make some like, I think on my projections, I said I'd increase our revenue and bottom line by like 100 grand, I think, which got me through. So I didn't say I was going to build a company that's going to do 20 million in the first year. I didn't do that, because then you just be BSing yourself, and the lender will
It's a
get a sense of that.
increase. One thing I'll say that worked really well with me when I did my first deal in the plumbing business before I had any plumbing experience is exactly to your point. It's really interesting that you say that, because I found the exact same thing. When I was looking for my industry expert, I interviewed probably 24 individuals and read every report, every blog, everything, went down that rabbit hole. So much so that and then I looked at a bunch of deals, and I'm sure, as you've seen, Omar, you learn a lot when you're analyzing acquisition targets. And so then when I finally was speaking with the chief underwriter, when I was applying for the loan, and this works very well, is I was almost taking the role of, hey, here's how this works, and here's why we're setting it up this way. Hey, here's how we're going to be billing, and here's how we're going to optimize billing. In other words, I almost took the role of the proctor and saying, hey, I know you look at a lot of different loans in a lot of different industries. I'm completely and entirely focused on the utilities business. And so let me talk to you about why we're doing things this way as opposed to that way, because I'm sure there's differences between the utilities business versus others. And I'm just focused on the utilities business, right? So I basically indirectly assumed and took the position that I was the authority on the utilities business. Sure, I don't have actual operational experience as of now in this business, but I've asked so many different industry experts about their opinion. I've interviewed so many different industry experts. I've looked at so many different acquisitions targets. I've read so many different white papers and articles and looked at so many different reports that at this point, yeah, I am the authority on how this business should be ran in this specific sector. Now, admittedly, once I operated, I realized there were things I did that were wrong, right? So there were things that I missed, but I sure as hell didn't make that, there's some humility that I think you demonstrate in those interviews as well. And they do ask, I remember I got asked a question about, have I ever got hit in the mouth before unexpectedly in a business before, and how did that go? And I had an answer. I talked about, things in the past where my business got challenged and then we pivoted. And so they wanted to hear that. But yeah, I found the exact same thing. Basically, your ability to speak articulately and confidently on the sector is huge. Anything else on that interview that from the ones that didn't work versus the one that got you the financing that you were seeking? Any other distinctions that you can draw?
Yeah, I think another thing would be is under you need to interview them and understand if they're interested in lending in your sector.
Yeah.
I knew some lenders that weren't interested in this sector specifically. I'm not sure because they maybe got burnt with deals or just didn't lend in that sector. And you want to understand the LTV when it comes to a lender. You ask those questions. You want to understand what the SER, how far they want to go, what the equity injection is required, because some of them say they require 30%, and it's maybe their lending criteria is what says that, but not. You don't need 30% down to get a deal through. You just have to find the aggressive lender who will lend, with 5% down or 10% down, whatever it is you want to do, however you want to structure the deal. Some of them also say, you can't use the seller note as equity in the deal. BS. I think that's BS. Maybe their lending institution doesn't allow that, but there are lenders that view that as equity in the deal. So it just depends on how you structure that, and it has to be on standby for the SBA note, but it can be done. So pretty soon I think the lending criteria right now for the SBA, it's 75. Is it 75%?
Yeah, it was 90. There was a golden era last year where it was normally the standard is that 75% is guaranteed. The final 25%, you have to be creative on the back end of the capital stack. Last year, during the back end of the, a word that makes this video get, frozen up and whatnot, but during a virus that passed around, it went to 90%. And then now recently they've brought it back down to 75%. So as an aside, and I don't know how much you want to go into the details, but I think just broad strokes will do. And I can say generally as a piece of advice, during the 90% era last year, you could do a 95-5 deal and it worked perfect, right? So basically there it's 90% SBA financing, 5% of seller's equity that's on hold for the life of the first position note. You raise 5% in investor capital, bam, 95-5 deal. And that deal was getting done a lot because the SBA was guaranteeing 90%. So basically there was no exposure for the lender. Now in the 75% guarantee environment, it really helps if you get two seller notes. One seller note, the 5% on hold for the life of the SBA loan, and then maybe you get another seller loan for 15 or so percent of the purchase price, where perhaps it's repaid over 7 years on a fully amortizing term at an 8% interest rate or what have you, right? And so there, now you have your 5% on hold for the life, another 15% that's going to be repaid over 7 years. You put 5% in cash in that you either put in yourself or get from an investor or get from somebody. And at that point, now the SBA can cover that difference. And you've basically given the SBA a bridge to not have exposure, which at the end of the day, that's what lenders want. And when I say the SBA, it's the SBA loan. It's actually a lender that's working on behalf of the SBA that is trying to get the deal done, but doesn't want exposure. And so it's your job as the deal maker to provide a bridge for that lender to give you the money that you need without them having a high amount of exposure. That's my 2 cents. I don't know if your deal got done before or after I want to say by then it was probably a 75% guarantee. Do you know? I'm not sure, honestly.
Yeah, it was after the 75. It was still at 75. It was a 75% guarantee. It went down to the 75% guarantee when I got mine done. Because I believe it ended in, I don't recall what month it ended. Was it 2021? October, September?
21. Yeah.
Something like that. So my by the time I started my loan process, we were past that threshold. So my deal wasn't going to get done with the 90% guarantee. So I did a structure just like you're explaining, a little bit different, but similar. We got 50% on hold for the life of the first position note, and then the 5% note on a 6-year fully amortized payback. So that's how we did it. And then the rest, part of it came from us, and then the rest came from the SBA.
Wham bam. I love it.
Yeah.
So that's your deal. You close. How was it? How was the experience for you of closing your first deal, the day of, and then the following Monday. Can you describe that real quickly? I know for me, I had some distinct experiences there, but was it anything meaningful there, or was it just closed? Great, let's go to work, and nothing to report. How was your experience that day?
No, we uh, it was exciting. It definitely the day you close, you sign all the paperwork, the final paperwork. You realize you just signed you just closed the deal officially. And then the following Monday or Tuesday, then you look in your account and you have working capital, which that makes it real.
Yeah, for
Makes it
sure.
extremely real once you see all that money hit your account. Um, and well, not your money, but the company's money. But the first day taking over, it was definitely nerve wracking. I'd say it's mixed feelings. You're excited, but you're nervous, you're scared, and all this and that, which is completely normal. Just be, I'd say the first day, or just be yourself. I'd say be humble. Don't go in with an attitude that you're gonna, you're the shit and all this and that. But just be. I mean, at the end of the day, they're all humans, and you have to be humble and treat them with respect if you want respect back, because you'll find out very shortly that employees will leave you if you don't treat them right. Um, People will leave. So, and I mean, the first, I'd say, couple of weeks was just trying to get everything switched over because we did an asset purchase. So a lot of the stuff was getting all these accounts set over with this new EIN, getting all the vendor accounts, applying for credit, just a bunch of chaos. And you could say the first couple of weeks, it just seems like a complete mess when you first take over. But I think if you take over a company that has extremely strong management, that has a person to fulfill certain roles. For example, bookkeeping. If you have a bookkeeper in house, you don't want one person to do everything in the in the company you acquire. So you don't want one person being the person who, let's say in your industry, Jason, you don't want one person writing estimates, and then you don't want that same person to be your foreman who goes and looks at all the projects and oversees each individual project. I mean, you want to have, I think, right? You want to have a person who has has a certain role they fulfill, and just deviates a lot of the work to people under him. That's one other thing I think is important. You don't want to acquire a company that's just the owner and and maybe his dog or something like that. You don't want that sort of business, unless it just depends on everybody's uh, goals and what they aspire to do. If you just want to own one business and that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, that's completely fine. But if you want to grow the size of the company and eventually exit at a certain multiple, then you just have to. It just depends on everybody's
Right.
ambitions,
If
I
you're
think.
ambitious, though, to that point, basically, you're saying you want strong management, you want a diversified team working under you, and that's what's going to free you up to, as we were talking offline prior, that's what's going to allow you to do more deals if that's what you
Yeah.
ultimately do, which I know I want to do, and as do you. So okay, so you get through the first day, you're humble, you're yourself, and in the first 45 days or so were a nightmare, as I knew it would be for you, because you did an asset deal, which is great now that all that hard work is done. And I don't know if you want to talk at all about working capital, but I know you and I had a
Oh yeah.
conversation before the close about that. Maybe you want to reference that real quick, because I think that was one thing I talked to you a lot about prior. And I don't know. I'll let you do the talking to whatever degree you want to share.
Yeah. I'd say working capital. That I forgot about that. Working capital is your biggest friend the day after you close, because if you don't have sufficient working capital, a lot of these a lot of these vendors, some will require, like some sort of. I mean, some lenders, if it just depending on your credit, will require to pay, for you to pay for a lot of the goods you buy
You're saying vendors, right?
upfront.
Vendors, not lenders. We're talking
Vendor, yeah,
vendors now.
vendors.
Yes.
Yep,
Okay.
vendors. So yeah, working capital. You want sufficient working capital to do cover payroll, all the bills, all the vendor accounts. Because a lot of these accounts, if you get lucky, depending on the previous owner's relationship with a lot of the vendors, you might just get by and use their account with
Mhm.
to a certain degree. A lot of them will require a credit app, and they run your credit. They'll see, how credit worthy you are. But in my deal, one lender actually in my deal was saying that we needed about 35, 40 grand in working capital, which would cover payroll for a month. And thankfully that loan didn't go through. Actually, no, actually thankfully it didn't go through, because the lender we work with gave us about 200, and it was, you can see once you're in business, you'll see how fast your account can dip, and especially when you're waiting for payments, and then you just scratching your head, wondering if when you're gonna get paid, or you're waiting for checks and all this and that, to build your account back up. But a lot of these accounts, a lot of these vendors, they work net 30, most of them, and you have to pay them 30 days after. So you'll see a big, um, your balance will decrease significantly when that first month you take over, and you have to write all these checks, you have to do payroll, and then you have your IRS deductions for your employees and all and that you have to forward. If you have benefits like 401ks, health insurance, you have to forward all those payments over. So one thing I do is ask for as much working capital as you can, to a certain degree, depending on your how much your business needs to survive on a month-to-month basis. If you think it requires about 50, 60,000, then ask for 200,000. Honestly, that's what I would do, to have some wiggle room. And then stuff does go wrong in the day-to-day. Stuff breaks, you have to fix it. That's money out of your pocket. So you want to have a host of working capital. My deal, I think they said they can only lend up to a certain percentage of your working capital couldn't be more than a certain percentage of the purchase price or your loan or something like that.
It's an absurd construct, but I digress. Yes.
Say that again.
It's an absurd construct. This idea that based on the purchase price, we already know what your working capital needs are.
No.
An ice cream shop is going to work very different than a contractor. I mean, ice cream sold, cash in. Contractor is I perform services and have vendor accounts open, and I may take 45 days to get paid. So it's like the idea that a purchase price should dictate the cash flow needs of the business is absurd. But I digress.
Well, I mean, if you don't have sufficient working capital, you could go bankrupt fairly soon, I'd say.
You could
you could definitely have you might become insolvent for a couple of weeks, let's say. But really
go insolvent. Yeah, you're cooked before you even got you didn't even get out of the stable, and you maybe had a profitable business, but it takes money to make money. It's that idea. You need operating cash to roll. Anyways, so, excuse me.
And, that's one thing there. That's one thing I got right, and was getting a sufficient working capital. And also another thing I'd advise is, day one, don't start, don't think because you see 200,000-300,000 in your account, your business account, don't think that money is yours, because you really don't know what, right now I've paid myself out of the company maybe once, and it's been minimal. I mean, really, very minimal. And I just want to get a good understanding of where I'm at, how much I'm cash flowing, and then from there I can dictate how much I could definitely take out. So I didn't go out and go buy I didn't go out and pay myself 20, 30 grand as a bonus or closing bonus. I didn't do that. That's just me. My that was a decision I took. I haven't dispersed funds to any of my partners whatsoever since we started. And they understand that. We want to understand where we're at with the company and what we want to do. We want to understand how much goes in, how much comes in, how much goes out, and how much comes in. And then from there, we can really dictate how much we can actually spend on certain things. So that's where
it's a sober approach, and it's tempting, right? Because, that deal closes if you want it. I mean, you could walk away the following Monday with 50 bills in your, 50G in your account, or in your hell, you could have it in your briefcase, right? I mean, you have the ability to do that kind of a thing, and no one can tell you that you can't. But I believe you're wise to watch a full couple of cash flow cycles come in and out, and then decide what you want to do, right? But as a general matter, if you really are ambitious, which I don't know how much you want to speak to what your ambitions are, but I can speak to myself. If you're really ambitious, if you can keep the money in the business and use that money to help with more recruitment, help acquire more vehicles, to open up a new office, something I know we're doing right now, and actually something you're doing in your other business, right? If you redeploy that capital back into your business, you can generate real growth. Not that you can't grow your business if you're taking a lot of money out, but you'll be in a more vulnerable position and less capable of financing growth if you're taking a lot of money out. So it's a decision you get to make: is do I want to live for the now, or do I want to double down on where the business is going? Anyways,
Right.
uh, any other comments? I'm glad you got the working capital piece right, because I didn't. I didn't when I got into Brighter Utilities, and that was a warning story I was telling you. By the way, if you don't mind me asking, did they? And I don't know the answer to this. Did you roll your working capital into your main loan, or did they do it separately?
It's all in one loan,
Nice. That's a win, which means it's amortized on the full. Yeah, see,
10-year.
bingo. That was clutch, right? And they didn't do that for me, right? Well, I won't go into my story. This is about you, but I had to go, we worked a separate silo for the working capital, and the term was different, and the interest rate was different, and all this stuff. So good for you. You did it once, you did it right, you held the line, and you got what you were looking for. Fair play.
Right. Well, one thing if I was to go do another deal right now, is definitely take in consideration current interest rates. That's one thing we were talking about earlier. Our, just not to get too personal, but our interest rate went up significantly just in the last couple of hours. So really take in consideration what current.
Hey, real quick, Omar, you cut out there for a second. Say that again. You're talking
Oh,
about your interest rate. Go ahead.
yeah. I'd say really consider the interest rates. Rather, I mean, understand what the current interest rates are at, and use a loan calculator and understand if the deal really works. Because
Yeah.
once the interest rates go up, uh, essentially his business is worth less. I'd say you pay less for the business because there's not enough DSCR to cover, that loan payment. I mean, your company becomes comes to the point where you're paying more if depending on the multiple, but it just becomes to the point where you might be paying more you're gonna be paying more out of your cash flow to repay this loan back. So you have to really consider what our current interest rates are at, and just analyze the company you're trying to buy, and just get an understanding of where you're at and how much debt you really can take on.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And whatever the interest rate is now, I would definitely underwrite your deal where it's in a 9% interest rate environment. If
Oh
you're
yeah.
at like prime plus 3%, yeah, I would definitely underwrite your deal with an extra 2, right? Because right now it's going to be around 7%. When I got into the business, it was down at 5.75. Right now it's going to be up at about 7. And I would certainly, you need to be prepared for a life where it's at 9 or 10%. Now, if your deal still cash flows at 10%, and does so with some meat on the bone, then I think you've got a fair play. To that point, and you said it, Omar, you should be looking to pay less for businesses right now because we're in a rising interest rate environment, and earnings multiples are a direct correlation are inversely correlated to interest rate. Purchase price and interest rate. When one goes up, the other goes down. So, and vice versa. Okay, good stuff. So we've covered a lot. This has been awesome. You closed the deal, stabilized it, went through all the BS of hooking up the EINs and the vendors and all of that. And I've been there and done that, and I have empathy because it's a lot of work. But now you want to talk about where you're at and where you want to go from here?
Yeah. So right now where I'm at is really getting the management down. My company has management, but we still need help with it. So I'm recruiting right now. That's where I'm at. Trying to fulfill those roles that I'm doing myself. From there, I plan to either keep growing organically, or just depends on what really comes up. I just need to understand what I need to do, and what my ambitions are and what I can do. I mean, is it ideal to go out and buy another company, or should I focus on this one, grow it, and then enter a different marketplace and start by an acquisition and then do that? But it's I'm definitely in the growth mode, where I want to grow this company to a certain size, and then um, keep acquiring other facilities, but not, I don't think in the same area. Maybe a couple 100 miles away, and build a name, get that brand name out there, and people, so people know who we are and what we do and all this other stuff. But that's where I'm at right now, is recruiting and filling those roles that need to be fulfilled.
That's awesome. And as you continue to get your existing business where it's at, you can start exploring other opportunities. It sounds like, I mean, I think it's fair to say you're a pretty damn ambitious guy. You've been starting businesses since you were in high school. So is it fair to say that, you're certainly keeping your eyes open for other opportunities for growth?
Yep, that's a yes.
Love it. Well, anything else that we should discuss here before we let you get back to your busy life?
No, I think I covered most of it. I think that's pretty much it on my end. That's kind of how it plays out. I'd say go for it, but also don't feel pressure to do a deal when your gut feeling tells you not to do it. There's certain deals in the back of your head, it's not the right deal. Stay away from them. You want to find a good acquisition. Um, that's the biggest one, with some sort of management in place, that can help you, and do your due diligence on the company and its market. Just try to get a feeling of, is it a reputable company? That could be a big one. So I do that as well. But definitely don't go for the first business you see for sale. Really do your due diligence and have a feeling, and just, if you have to feel excited to own the company you're trying to buy. If you're not, I think you're buying the wrong company, the wrong business. So I think that's one important note to take off.
I love it. I appreciate it. And thank you for showing up. Omar, do you want people to check out your stuff anywhere, or are you just the handsome individual that shows up faceless as Omar's iPhone and drops knowledge and then leaves? Anywhere you want me to point people, or do you want to just sign off and wish them well?
For now, I'd say just leave it at as anonymous.
Yeah.
But if you have somebody that you have a feeling use my help, I'm more than happy to help. You do the call, you make a call on that, and if they need some help and you feel like I can be some help to them, be more than happy to help them.
Very true, Jen. Well, hey, I really appreciate it, and I again want to say thank you, and also just really stoked to see that you were grinding it out for a minute there. Had a couple deals that were close, and I'm just so excited that you got it over the goal line, and now you're able to really, I think, look at the landscape from a new perspective. That going from 0 to 1 is the hardest part, but now, and I know you still have challenges. It's not to discount that operations and being a business owner it's an easy thing. It's not, but now your whole world changes when you go from 0 to 1 and after the fact. That was my experience. And I know you've started businesses before, but very lastly, and then we'll let you go. Any kind of comments on how the world has changed for you, or at least what your mindset is now that you've done a deal? Any last comments on that, as far as the differences between going from 0 to 1 to how you view the world as a business person now?
Oh yeah, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, I can see, it all went from an idea of wanting to buy a company to actually doing it. And now that you're in the game, right now I have certain vendors who have asked me if I'm interested in purchasing more companies in my same industry. But they don't seem to be a fit, nothing I'd be interested in. But just, it goes from a place where you're viewed as, no one, and then out of nowhere you acquire the company, and then after a couple of weeks, you even get vendors who try to bring deals to you. Hey, we got this customer who's been buying all this stuff from us for the last 20 years. They're on the edge of selling. Would you be interested? And you kind of look at them and you make your judgment call there, and see if it's something you want to do. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely, now I can see myself definitely growing to the size I want to go to. You start meeting people, true people that are in the business, in the industry, and it comes from I'd say from sort of this sort of fantasy view you have over buying companies and growing this company and all this and that, to actually living it is completely different. It's the point where you really think it's possible. You start believing it and living it.
That's a beautiful note to end it on. Omar, thank you. And let's end this recording, and then I'll give you a call and we'll discuss a little bit here. But thank you again for coming out. Appreciate it.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye.